feel fine. Godspeed, John Glenn.
Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed. Roger, Tranquility. We copy you on the ground.
New possibilities are opening up for scientific cooperation between countries.
1-0. Liftoff. Americans return to space as Discovery clears the tower.
Discovery, go and throttle up.
Discovery, Roger. Go for deploy.
And everybody in the shuttle program, the crew is go for launch.
Roger. Nice to be in orbit.
We have followed in their footsteps to get us where we are today.
Good afternoon and welcome to NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida. I'm Joshua Finch of NASA's Communication. We're here to discuss NASA's SpaceX Demo 2 mission. Teams from NASA and SpaceX just completed the flight readiness review, and we're joined by participants who can tell us more about that review. We'll first start with our presenters. First, we have NASA Administrator Jim Bridenstine, NASA Associate Administrator Stephen Jersick, Kathy Leaders, Manager of NASA's Commercial Crew Program, Kirk Shireman, Manager, International Space Station Program, Benji Reed, Director of Crew Mission Management at SpaceX, and Norm Knight, Deputy Director at NASA's Johnson Space Center Flight Operations. We're going to begin with opening comments from our presenters, and then we'll turn it over to questions. We're going to start with NASA Administrator Jim Bridenstine, who does have to leave a little bit early during today's briefings. So we'll start with Mr. Bridenstine.
Well, thank you, Josh, and it is good to be here at the Kennedy Space Center. We are obviously in the media room where we have had many conferences before. I remember fondly Demo 1. I remember fondly the launch abort test, and this room was absolutely packed. And here we are today in an empty room talking to cameras, and all of us are 6 feet apart. And of course, we all walked in here with our masks on, and of course, what we are doing here today exemplifies what we were doing in the launch readiness review. So these are different times, but it is also a time when we need to be doing amazing things as a nation and inspiring the entire world, and that's what we're doing. The flight readiness review is complete. We have another milestone under our belts. It was a good review, great discussion. I think everybody in the room was very clear that now is the time to speak up if there are any challenges. And there were conversations that were had that were very important to be had. But it's also true that at the end, as each system and subsystem was considered, at the end we got to a go. So we are now preparing for a launch in 5 short days. So I want to say it's good to be here at the Kennedy Space Center. There's a lot of work left to do. The rocket is on the pad, and we've got a static fire in front of us, or I should say a hot fire in front of us, as well as a lot of checks to do. But the launch readiness review was good, and we are a go. So with that, Josh, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you. And now we'll go to Stephen Jersick.
Thank you, Josh. So first I want to say it was an honor to chair the first flight readiness review for a crew transportation system developed in the U.S. In 9 years. So I definitely was honored, and I was humbled to be the chair of the flight readiness review for the SpaceX Commercial Crew Demo 2 flight. Like Jim said, it was an excellent review. I knew going in that the team was ready. We were ready to do this review, and they absolutely demonstrated that during the review. Day and a half of really good presentations, really good discussions, and we accomplished what we needed to accomplish to determine that we are ready for flight. There are no significant open issues, I am happy to report. In the end, it was a very, very clean review. There's just the planned forward work to get done. There's quite a bit of it between now and launch. But we are ready to launch on Wednesday, May 27th at 4:33 p.m. And it's a credit to the team, the SpaceX NASA team, for their hard work and dedication to get to this point. One thing I mentioned in the flight readiness review was this team represents the values of NASA. Safety, they have been laser focused on safely launching Bob and Doug into space, getting them to the space station and returning them home safely. Teamwork, I've never seen a team work together this effectively to conquer the challenges to get to this point. Integrity in everything they've done. I've just been so impressed with the openness and frankness of all our discussions, which is really critical to get to the point we're ready to launch. And then excellence. If you were in the flight readiness review and heard the briefings from the engineering team, just incredible engineers, and they demonstrated the excellence that we expect from both SpaceX as well as NASA. And I could not be more proud of the team. So thank you very much, Josh.
And we'll now go to Kathy Leaders. Kathy?
Wow. Oh, a really big day for the joint NASA SpaceX commercial crew team. I am so grateful for the NASA and SpaceX team who have dug deep and worked so hard to get us to this point. We have a tremendous team, and I'm very, very proud of them. I'm proud of the opportunity we had to be able to present to the agency our readiness and then have them agree. So very, very proud of the team, very proud of the team and the culmination of their work. I'm in awe that I get to lead this team. It's really an honor. But we're not done. You know, we talked a few weeks ago about we got to do this right. And we got to launch Bob and Doug. We got to make sure they're taken care of on orbit. And we got to make sure they get home. And we are committed to do that. And we're going to stay vigilant over the next few days. We still have a static fire. Jim, you did get that right. It is a static fire. And tomorrow we have also another really important event. It's a dry dress. It's kind of our last run through with the crew to make sure that we're really ready to get ready for launch. And then we have our final launch readiness review on Monday. So I'm really proud of this team. We're going to take it one step at a time, and we're going to still fly when we're ready. But thank you to my whole team, to the NASA team, to the SpaceX team, to the ISS team that has helped us get this far.
And we'll now go to Kirk Shireman.
Good afternoon. It's a great pleasure to be here. I'm very excited to have been able to participate in this review. So much like we have the preparations Kathy was describing here on the planet, I can tell you there's great things and preparations going on orbit. So last Wednesday, JAXA launched the HTV, and so as we're conducting our review here, the HTV is rapidly catching up to the International Space Station and will be arriving to the ISS on Monday. So just a few days before Demo 2 launches, it'll arrive to ISS. It'll be grappled by Chris Casti, and by the time Demo 2 arrives, it'll be part of the space station. I had a chance to talk to the on-orbit crew, so Chris, Yvonne, and Anatoly Wednesday, just a few minutes really before I left to come down here to the Kennedy Space Center. I can tell you those guys are very focused, very excited, and are preparing for having Bob and Doug arrive on orbit. So great preparations going on orbit. And finally, coming home, we'll bring home Bob and Doug safely, but we're also counting on bringing home some experimental results on the Dragon too. So a great test flight, but also the ability to make use of that vehicle to bring home some experiments that have been on orbit for a while. So looking forward to that opportunity. So this year we're celebrating 20 years of having humans living and working in space, and we're very, very much excited to have the first humans launched to the International Space Station since July 8, 2011. So July 8, 2011, last time humans left the planet here in Kennedy and the Kennedy Space Center and went to the International Space Station. very much looking forward to next week. Having Bob and Doug on orbit, continuing human presence in National Space Station, learning and exploring. So with that, it's my great pleasure to introduce to you Benji Reed, director at SpaceX and a good friend. He and his team have worked tremendously over the last few years to make us here today. So, Benji.
Thank you very much, Kirk. You know, it is, you use the word they're friends, and I think it's important. You know, we're not just colleagues here or even just partners. Over the years, we've built friendships. But in those friendships, we hold each other accountable. It's an honor, the responsibility that we carry jointly with NASA and our friends and partners and our company at SpaceX. And it's a sacred honor. And those are meaningful words when we say that. Our job is to carry Bob and Doug to the space station, hand them to Kirk, let them do what they get to do on space station, help keep the space station running and safe, and then we need to bring them home safely back to their families. As we like to often mention, you know, they are dads. They've got families back home, and it's just as important as we're all taking care of each other through these interesting times. We're needing to take care of the crew and bring them home. And again, on that sacred journey together, we all are holding each other accountable. And as Kathy said, there's more to do. Today we got to go, and it was a monumental and incredible journey to get to today's review. But we still have our static fire this afternoon, our dry dress, as Kathy mentioned, tomorrow. And then we have our own launch readiness review, which NASA will be attending and with us just before launch to ensure that we're really ready. But just to talk a little bit about what got us in the, recently to today, we've got a few photos. Thought might be nice to bring up. There's Dragon, getting ready to be transported from where we prepare the vehicles over to the hangar. We can go to the next shot, and there's Dragon and Falcon mated together, ready to roll out to the pad. We'll go to the next shot, and there they are. They're in the transport erector. The barn door is open. The door to the hangar is open, and Dragon is ready to leave, heading up to the pad. And there they are, erected on the pad. The crew arm there has moved into position. It's attached to or against the Dragon now, and we're ready. We're ready to go into static fire now in just a little bit, about an hour and a half from now. We talk a lot about the whole mission. Today we got to go to launch, but really it's a go to the mission. There'll be lots more data, lots more reviews in the next few days. There'll be constant vigilance and watching of the data and observations as we go through the mission. There'll be other reviews and conversations to make sure we're go for each aspect, including go to come home. But really, we always need to think about this as an entire mission, and again, bringing Bob and Doug home safely. And to that end, I think we've got a new video that we've pulled together to show our parachutes and a new compilation of all the parachute work that we've done. That last shot there is a beautiful image of the capsule coming home from our Demo 1 test. It is so incredible being here at Kennedy Space Center, the home of launching astronauts from space, of American astronauts from American soil on American vehicles, and we get to do it again in just 5 days. And so on behalf of all the teams working Dragon and Falcon and our hardware and software teams and everybody in our factory, all the way to our operations groups, we are honored to be that NASA has trusted us with this endeavor, that Bob and Doug trust us, and we're excited to do it. Thank you very much.
And now we'll go to Norm Knight.
All right. Well, it's a real honor to be here with you this afternoon. It was a fun 2 days, very long days. But from a crew perspective, this review was fantastic. We're satisfied with the discussions that were had, the thoroughness and the readiness of folks coming in and having the necessary discussions to assure that Doug and Bob are safe. And again, it's crew safety, vehicle safety, and test flight objectives in that order. As far as the discussion goes with respect to risk and how that risk is managed. So we're very satisfied with that, and we're thankful for the teams, not only at SpaceX, but across the agency with engineers and safety engineers and integration folks that have really pulled together to make this a success. So again, it was a really good day. But, you know, it didn't just start with this review. It was really a journey that, again, friendship and partnership with SpaceX that started many years ago, and the astronaut office has been actively involved with SpaceX. It was a joint test team that was formed to embed the astronauts and our team members in with SpaceX to work together, to work in the development, to work into the human factors, and to make sure that the training was done and conducted in a joint manner so that we can again, meet those objectives of crew safety and vehicle safety. That was done very well. That was a great journey. A lot of folks were involved with that, and it was very successful. The trust that was built with these teams over many years will pay infinite dividends, because that trust, I call it the fabric of trust, is what holds us together as teams when things get stressed and strained and we're working issues and anomalies and getting ready for flight test readiness reviews and things like that. That's what's going to hold us together for this, and that's what's going to hold us together throughout this whole mission, from the time the crew leaves astronaut crew quarters to the time that they are returned and safely touch down and returned back to their families. That is all of our objectives, whether you're from SpaceX or NASA, is get the crew back safely. Today was also another great milestone, really, in the continued journey and road that NASA is paving for human exploration. And it's great. It dovetails right in with Artemis, and it's part of this overall objective of NASA paving a road that our commercial partners are going to travel upon as we go forward. So very exciting. Give you a quick preview of the crew schedule as we go forward. Tomorrow's a big day, as Kathy said. It's the dry dress. The crew will get up in the morning around 8 a.m. and start doing dry dress preparations. They'll get some briefings. They'll suit up. They'll head to the pad, and it'll be a dry dress and a practice run and prep for launch. So we're very excited with that. The culmination of that will be a debrief. They'll head back to the astronaut crew quarters where they've been in quarantine and start getting prepared for additional training and launch preps. So with that, again, it's an honor to be here.
Thank you, Norm. And I believe that's about the time that we have today with Administrator Jim Breinstein. Thank you for being with us for opening comments. And we're now going to transition over to taking your questions. You can take questions using the hashtag AskNASA. And then, of course, we have media dialed in on the phone bridge. So we'll start with our first question from Michael Sheets. Michael?
Hi, folks. Thanks again, as always, for hosting this. I'm really curious in the length and thoroughness of this review that we did the last 2 days. Aside from the technical takeaways, what should people understand about what this panel together concluded in preparation for Demo 2? Is this a spacecraft that NASA has deemed human rated? Is that the broad takeaway? And how do people who aren't maybe as savvy with the industry should understand this means in preparation for the launch?
Okay, so first and foremost, this was a readiness review for the Demo 2 launch. So we went over, like Mr. Breinstein discussed, all the systems on the spacecraft, on the launch vehicle, on the ground, and ensured that all the issues had been closed satisfactorily, and they were. In fact, all those issues were closed out prior to the review. All the waivers, all the deviations, all the requirements verifications, all of that was done prior to the review and closed out by the program, both NASA and SpaceX. So it was a very successful FR for Demo 2. It also was an interim human rating certification review. And what I mean by interim is that we validated that this system meets the human rating certification requirements for the Demo 2 mission. And those requirements feed forward to future missions, including the Crew 1 mission. We will have a final human rating certification review after Demo 2 and before the Crew 1 mission, just to certify the relatively small set of design changes between the Demo 2 system and the Crew 1 system. And at that point, we'll deem the system human rating certified. But today's review and the interim human rating certification went a long way to certifying the system for crewed flight.
And our next question is from Marina Corin from the Atlantic. Marina?
Hi, everyone. Kirk, this is a question for you. Last year, before the uncrewed demonstration flight, there was some disagreement between you and your Russian counterparts about the capsule's approach to the ISS, which, of course, was resolved before launch. Did any officials from Roscosmos provide any dissenting opinions this time around on anything?
Well, Roscosmos actually was part of our review for the last 2 days. So Roscosmos, a number of our Russian colleagues participated, and they participated from Moscow. So while they were long days for us, they were actually long nights for our Russian colleagues. By the way, our Japanese colleagues participated from Japan. So quite the marathon for many of us. But our Russian colleagues work with us in that interim between Demo 1 and Demo 2. We've had countless discussions with them about all the requirements, about all the waivers that we've taken, and so we went through all those, technically explained to our Russian colleagues, answered their questions, and finally a big shout out to SpaceX. One of the big concerns that Roscosmos had was a very, very remote possibility of a failure, but if that failure occurred, it could cause damage, perhaps even catastrophic damage to the ISS. SpaceX said, we understand and we'll make a modification. So SpaceX actually went out and made a modification to their vehicle between Demo 1 and Demo 2. So it was really some of all those things. Great communication with our Russian partners, an outstanding effort on behalf of SpaceX to close that gap. And then the trust that we've built over the years to get us today. So Roscosmos participated, and they were go, and no concerns with that remaining issue.
And our next question is from Stephen Clark from Spaceflight Now. Stephen?
Hi, thank you for taking my question. I had a question, I guess, for Kathy leaders maybe. I know the commercial crew program requirement for loss of crew risk is 1 in 270. I know there's reason not to look too hard at these numbers, but that, as I understand, was a requirement for the commercial crew program. Just curious where you ended up in the loss of crew number for this mission and what mitigations operationally or physically on the spacecraft you had to do in recent months or recent last year or two to get to that 1 in 270 requirement. Thanks.
So we actually, between the SpaceX and operational controls, we actually were meeting our 1 in 270 requirement. And it's not just a mission; it's an overall certification requirement. So, with all the work that we've been doing with SpaceX on the modeling, on the different aspects of their design, and obviously MMOD mitigation and inspection, that requirement was closed out acceptably.
And our next question is from Tim Fernholz at Quartz. Tim?
Hello, everyone. Thank you for doing this, and good luck. 2 questions, if I might. One for Steve. I'm just curious, for those of us who haven't participated in a flight readiness review, can you give us like a tangible example of the kind of back and forth that might happen in that room, and does it get down to the engineers on a specific subcomponent area, or is it at a more high level? And for Benji, I'm just curious, I know it's hard to put an exact number on this, but can you talk about how SpaceX has invested in developing the Crew Dragon alongside taxpayers? Thank you all.
So, a big part of a flight readiness review is reviewing and accepting the risks. Whenever we fly, there are going to be residual risks. Kathy and Benji and their team did a great job along the way in these many years of identifying risks, understanding them, mitigating them through design changes and operational controls, to the point where we were able to accept a lot of them, most of them, along the way. So an example of one that we've been that the team has been working on over the last 6 months or so were the Dragon parachutes. So we established a little while ago that the original chute designs did not have adequate margin based on some knowledge we had gained through testing about how the chutes deploy and the loading on the chutes. So SpaceX stepped up and did a new chute design, and we had to qualify that new chute design to higher margins than we had the previous chutes. The NASA SpaceX team did an amazing job laying out a test program and executing that test program. However, it's fewer tests than we normally would see on a parachute qualification program. So we took a long time and a couple of presentations during the review to have the team walk us through the design, the changes, the qualification testing, and the margins on the chute to make sure that everybody was good with how those chutes were qualified, and we had very high confidence that they will function as we need them to when Bob and Doug return from the International Space Station.
And our next question is from Eric Berger, Ars Technica. Eric.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for doing this. I guess the question maybe for Kathy, it's been a little more than a year ago when there was the accident, when they were testing the Super Drago thrusters, and it was a pretty visceral image of what happened on the pad there, and at the test pad. And I'm just wondering, did you think we would get here a year later to where we're ready to launch Crew now after that accident?
Well, I've been doing this for a really long time. I told somebody I feel like an old lady now after kind of working vehicle development now for 14 years. And don't ever underestimate the value of a failure, right? I've learned that when I look at over my career, when we've made the biggest progress, it's been in learning from a failure and then using that as a step function to move you to the next level. So, but you also should never underestimate how much work it is for you to overcome it, right? So we always had a plan. We had a plan that we were trying to fly, potentially by the end of December, but we weren't going to fly until we're ready, until we worked through all the testing and everything we needed. So I look back on last April, and the static fire was really for us to get ready for our in-flight abort test that was supposed to happen in June. And I think that was a real blessing for us. We learned a ton about our system and have made a spacecraft and expanded the knowledge of materials in NTO systems to an extent that give us a real sustained understanding of our systems and further robustness of the new design that we have. So last April, I probably wasn't thinking I was going to be flying in a year, but you know what? You can never sell this NASA and SpaceX team short, and they've always accomplished miracles for me, and I'm very, very proud of them right now.
Thank you, Kathy. And I think I skipped over one question for Benji about how SpaceX has contributed. Benji, do you want to answer that question from Tim Fernholz?
Great, sure, absolutely. So I can't, give you the exact dollar amount. There's, proprietary and competitive reasons why we can't. But I can tell you absolutely that SpaceX has invested heavily into this partnership and into the development of Dragon and Falcon. If you go all the way back to the days when we were developing our Falcon 1 vehicle, that's the fundamental systems and processes, and even a lot of the development of the engineers and team that created Falcon 1 are still working on the program today. And then you fast forward and you look at the development of Falcon 9 and Dragon, again in partnership with NASA under the COTS program and the cargo programs, and then continuing through now to the Crew Dragon. The partnership is definitely a two-way street, and we've put a lot of time and energy and finance into that effort to ensure that we're ready to fly, as we will be in 5 days. A lot of what you should look at is you see the workforce that we've developed, you see the technologies that we've developed to ensure that we're ready to fly. Another element I think it's important to pay attention to is kind of the I won't say pioneering, because we weren't the first to do firm fixed price contracting, but I think we've been champions, is a good word, of firm fixed price contracting from the beginning. Fundamentally, this is about saying to the taxpayer, hey, there's something you want us to do. Here's how much we're going to charge for it, and we're going to go do it for that amount of money. And that's in some ways, I think it used to be a pretty revolutionary concept, and I think we've shown that is a very effective tool for getting the best value to the government, to NASA, and to the American taxpayer. And as is recently reported, estimated that this program overall will have saved NASA, maybe $30 to $40 billion at least. And that's a significant thing to think about and see how we continue. Again, those firm fixed price contracts and the kind of partnership and truly open partnership where we work together allows that kind of savings to happen, and that kind of ability for NASA to invest in more things and do other programs.
Our next question is from Lauren Grush at The Verge. Lauren?
Hi, thanks for doing this. I was wondering if you could go through all the possible abort scenarios for this flight. At which points are the aborts available, and how does that put constraints on when you can launch, notably whether, how big of an area do you need to consider on launch day? Thanks.
Sure. I'll talk a little about that, and then Norm, if you wanted to add anything to it as well. But I think that the number one of the key requirements of this program is to have an abort system, and we want to develop our vehicle to have this integrated abort system, what we call the launch escape system. Those are the Super Dracos on the vehicle, the Super Draco engines, and it's a very effective system that we hope we never ever have to use. It's sort of like the airbags in your car or the ejection seat in a jet plane. You put a lot into it, you test it, and you make sure it's going to work, and then you hope you never ever have to use it. In 2015, we did our pad abort test to demonstrate that we could escape from the pad and into the water, come down safely into the water with the astronauts. And then again in January of this year, we did the in-flight abort test, launched on a Falcon 9, and initiated the launch escape system mid-flight in some of the roughest moments of the launch, and demonstrated again that launch escape system can bring the vehicle down and bring the crew home safely to the water and then be able to be recovered. You asked the question about when is it available. It's really available almost the entire time. One of the goals of this system is to not have any blackout periods where you really can't, where that system doesn't function. And that's a big step in the history, the evolution of using these systems. And a good example of that, a little while back, on one of the Soyuz launches, they needed to use the launch escape system, and it worked great. And that was, but the part of flight where they needed to use it was actually something that they had been expanding into. So over time, they had continued to improve that system in the same way that we've been charged to do the same thing on our system to ensure that you can cover all of the path of flight. You asked about weather and what we might look for, and that's a really important point. And I didn't mention it earlier, but I think it's important to talk about weather. on coming up here for launch day. It looks really nice outside today, but we're always monitoring a lot of things, and it does have very much to do with the launch support system on Dragon 2. So when we're normally flying a Falcon mission, say with a satellite fairing mission, we're monitoring a lot of different things. We're looking at ground winds, we're looking at lightning, we're looking at upper atmosphere winds along the ascent trajectory. But it's focused particularly on the Falcon, and we'll be looking at all of those and the same kind of thresholds to call off the launch. For Falcon, we'll do that the same for the crew missions. But now we need to add into that all of the weather along the entire ascent track where we might need to escape the crew, abort the crew off of Falcon. And it's really there's 50 points. Where we're monitoring weather, over 50 points actually, where we're monitoring weather all the way along the ascent track, which means from here in Florida all the way up the eastern seaboard of North America, United States and Canada, and all the way over basically to Ireland across the northern Atlantic. We'll be monitoring that weather, and along that way we're monitoring a lot of the same things. We're looking at winds, we're looking at lightning, we're looking at precipitation, and we're actually looking at waves. We're looking at wave velocity and wave height. Because we need to make sure that if the crew had to come down in a launch escape scenario, that they would come down in a sea state that would keep them safe, and that the rescue forces would be able to come and get them. Again, we hope we never have to use that, but we're monitoring all of those parameters as we go along, and we don't launch until we know that we're ready.
And our next question is from Leo Enright at Irish TV. All right, and it looks like we lost that connection, so we'll go to Irene Klotz at Aviation Week. Irene?
Thanks, Josh. My question's for Benji Reed. Given what you've learned working with NASA on commercial crew for all these years, how much faster do you think SpaceX can get to crew flight with Starship?
So that's a great question. Although I have to say that our focus today, of course, is on Demo 2. And my focus particularly has been on the commercial crew program. Super excited as we develop Starship and develop that in partnership with NASA in the contracts that we're already working, the programs are already working with them. Again, it's a process. And I would say, though, that just looking at the development of the NASA SpaceX partnership from the cargo days, now through the crew days, having worked together and understood each other and influenced each other, we've learned a lot from NASA, and we've taken a lot from them, and I think we've given back, and I think NASA has grown and changed in ways that are valuable and productive for them as well. And I think that every time you do this together, it's going to get better. We'll get more efficient and do better. And I was just chatting with the director of Marshall's Center, and talking about some of the new programs we'll be working on with them there too for Starship. And we're excited. We're excited to continue that partnership and make it work better and more efficient, and always safer and more reliable.
And our next question is from Mike Wall, space.com. Mike?
Thank you all. This is a question about kind of what the next steps are going forward, between now and actually launch day. I'm just mostly curious about what do you need to kind of tick off on during the review this coming Monday that you guys didn't talk about during the flight readiness review. So that's probably for if I guess Benji, what's Monday's review going to look like, and how it's going to be different from what's already been discussed?
Launch readiness review is ultimately the final check to make sure that everything that was open, any open issues or concerns, that those have been answered. Anything new that we may have discovered, again, has been closed and answered. But particularly, it's really an assessment of the data, right? We'll have done our static fire that we're doing here shortly this afternoon. We'll have done our our dry dress rehearsal with the crew. And that's a ton of data. Really, really important that all of our engineers, and they're all on deck and ready to go right now. And for the next few days through the weekend, they will be analyzing and looking at all the data and all the observations that are made. And launch readiness review is to go again across all of the teams and every person and say, are you ready? What did you learn? What came out of the data? Are we ready to go?
And our next question is from Emery Kelly, Florida Today. Emery?
Hey, folks. Thanks for doing this. I appreciate it. Administrator Bridenstine mentioned, over the course of the past 2 days, folks could speak up if they had any questions, and I know you mentioned the discussion between the Russians and the issue resolved between Demo 1 and Demo 2, and I know you discussed parachutes. I'm curious if there was anything else that came up yesterday and today that maybe led to some longer discussions that sticks out. Thank you.
Yeah, so the other two kind of technical special topics we had was the NTO titanium compatibility issue that was discovered during the Dragon hot fire test back in April. Also a tremendous amount of work done by the NASA SpaceX team to understand that and to figure out how to mitigate and control that hazard, and a lot of questions to just understand where we were and make sure that we were ready to accept that risk, the residual risk there for the Demo 2 flight, which we are. Again, I cannot tell you the amount of testing that was done by the White Sands test facility team and the SpaceX team in McGregor, particularly the SpaceX team in McGregor, over the past few weeks. They've done a tremendous amount of testing, and that testing gives us confidence that we have a system that's going to perform, and we'll have that abort capability that Benji was discussing earlier. Another one was a more late-breaking issue, late-breaking within the next month or so, not days, but late, on performance shortfall of the fire suppression system. So the team, it's a system that suppresses any fire underneath any equipment or anything on the floor of Dragon, underneath the floor of Dragon. And so the team again analyzed both the hazards there as well as the ability of the system to suppress a fire. We deemed the risk to be very low there. And so we were able to review that data and that great work done by the team and accept that risk. So a couple examples of technical issues that had been closed out before the review, but were reviewed by the board. Lots of questions, lots of back and forth. And in the end, we agreed with the program with them closing those issues, and we were ready to proceed.
And our next question is from Jeff Faust at Space News. Jeff?
Yeah, good afternoon. Actually, just to sort of follow up on the previous question, there's discussion that there's still some open work left to do to tie up loose ends before the launch. Can you give some examples of some of that open work that still has to be done between now and presumably the launch readiness review on Monday? Thanks.
So I think, we mentioned the open work. There's final checkouts on the spacecraft that happen, like prior to final hatch closure. That's normal, standard work. We already mentioned the big event. The big event, obviously, static fire today, making sure the launch vehicle, final checkouts on the vehicles are done. Going through and doing dry dress. I mean, like we already talked about, dry dress and making sure that whole system for delivery of the crew to the pad, working through all those pieces, making sure everything's working, days before the launch. That's all normal open work. And then doing the job of going through all the data out of the tests. We'll be working Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday up to launch day to make sure that we're still checking everything out. I talked a couple weeks ago about continuing to dot the I's and cross the T's, and that's the kind of open work we're talking about right now.
And our next question is from Dave Mosier at Business Insider. Dave? And our next question will actually be from Jackie Goddard with the Irish Times of London. Jackie?
This
The Times, yes. Hello, thank you. My question, I think, is for Kirk. Earlier this week, there was a report from Sputnik, the Russian government news agency, that quoted Roscosmos officials saying that they were monitoring increased benzene levels inside the space station. They stressed there was no threat to crew and that the concentrations didn't exceed the exposure limit. But can you tell us what that's all about? Was there any focus of conversation at the review? And does it raise any potential for concern with sending 2 additional crew up? Thank you.
Well, what's going on in the Russian government, I'm not the right person to ask. I think Roscosmos would be the right group to ask. I can tell you that we work very closely with our Russian partners. I speak to them, if not daily, certainly weekly. We actually have some people in my organization who live in Moscow, and so we're very, very close, great partners. There has been no discussion about any immediate change in the work that they're doing. Certainly no increased risk to the crew today as a result of any of this. So I'm not concerned at all about that. I think maybe what they're referring to might be longer-term decisions that the Russian government and the Russian Space Agency could make, but that would really be a question for them. So the Russian crew, I actually spoke with Ivan and Anatoly on orbit this week, and they're very excited about having 2 more crew members come up there. The ISS is in great shape. The crew on orbit's in great shape. I know the crew here on the ground, you guys just talked with them, they're in great shape. So I think the vehicle on orbit's ready to go, and we're working to make the vehicle here on the ground ready to go.
Great. And our next question is from Antonia Amarillo with Florida Today.
Yes, hi. Thanks for taking my question. I was wondering, why does it take Crew Dragon 19 hours to reach the International Space Station when it only takes Soyuz 6 hours? And can Crew Dragon, get there to the space station quicker? And if so, why hasn't SpaceX and NASA decided to do that? Thanks.
You bet. Absolutely. I mean, it's about orbital mechanics. It's about when you launch, right? There's phasing that you have to do to get to the space station, and so you look at the different launch opportunities, again based on weather and a whole number of other factors, and you determine when's the best time to launch, and so you set up a number of launch opportunities, days and times, and some of those launch opportunities require more phasing time, and some of them require less. And so on the 27th, it's about a 19-hour phasing, but then on other days it would be less, other days it could be more. So it really just depends on the launch. It's the orbit of space station and the time of day and time of year that determines that length of time.
I will just add one more thing. This is a test flight. We talk about this launch, but this is a test flight, right? And so we could have picked different launch days that had different phasing opportunities, right? But there's also checkouts that we're doing along the way. So we kind of picked a day that would also, a phasing opportunity that would give us the time to be able to do those checkouts along the way, because this is a critical test flight. Bob and Doug are going to get to test fly the vehicle and check it out and make sure that first time people are going to be in a SpaceX vehicle and get to kind of take it out for a test run there and make sure that before it's certified that the design is working. So this is a really, really important flight for us. We got 2 great test pilots in there, and they're going to be checking out the vehicle.
And if I could add one more thing, the Soyuz was designed in the 70s, started flying in the 80s, and the norm has been 34 orbits, or really 2 days for the Soyuz to get to International Space Station. It's only been in the last three and a half years that they started going to, instead of 2 days, to get to 6 hours. And so I'm counting on SpaceX to accelerate the time in the next 20 years. So
I'll say Kathy makes a really good point. One of the cool things that and we're going to work on that, Kirk. And I hope it's a lot sooner than 20 years. Is Bob and I are going to get a chance to try sleeping on Dragon, and that's a really good point. And another thing about the crew is that they have taken to heart as test pilots the importance of their work to ensure the readiness of the vehicle and the system and the program for future crews. To them, in their mind, was always, is this the right, safe, reliable system for anybody to fly in, but also to make sure that their colleagues in the crew office would be able to continue to do exactly what they want to do. So they're testing it out not just for themselves, but for all future flights. And that's exactly right. It's one of the reasons we want to make sure they got to sleep on board, they got to eat meals and do all that kind of cool stuff while they're on board Dragon, yet trying to get them to station as quickly and safely as possible.
And our next question is from Jackie Waddles at CNN. Jackie?
Hey, folks. Thanks so much for doing this. My question is for Steve. So with Doug Lavero leaving the HAO this week, Steve, I know you took over Doug's role in this review, and I was curious if you had to do any additional preparation to assume that role, and if that last-minute change created any challenges over the past couple of days.
Yeah, actually, I've been conducting agency-level reviews of the Commercial Crew Program for the last 2 years as the Associate Administrator, as part of my chairmanship of the Agency Program Management Council. So every 2 to 3 months, Kathy has come in and briefed agency leadership, including myself, on the program. All the issues and challenges, the resolution of them, or paths to resolution. So those reviews, prepared me really well to step in and chair the Flight Readiness Review, as well as, I think, quarterly, the Aerospace Safety Advisory Panel reviews the commercial program, and Kathy makes a presentation to them. I think I've sat in on all or most of those reviews also. So given all that, I was well prepared. I also want to stress that there was a series of really great reviews leading up to the Flight Readiness Review. It wasn't just this one review. So there are engineering reviews of each system on Dragon and on Falcon by the engineering teams. They were a little concerned about doing those virtually versus face-to-face given COVID-19, but the feedback I got was that those reviews were very effective. Then there was the Station Operations Readiness Review by Kirk. Very good, successful review. There was a Flight Readiness Review by SpaceX, led for their purposes. There was a Flight Test Readiness Review led by Kathy and the team, and that led up to the Flight Readiness Review. So I sat in also on some of those reviews. So I felt very, very prepared to chair the review. And so don't think there are any significant challenges in transitioning from Doug to myself and chairing the FRR.
And our next question is from Marcia Dunn, Associated Press. Marcia?
Yes, hello. I'd like both SpaceX and NASA to address this. All space flight is risky, but this is a true test flight. And I'd like to, a big picture from you on just how risky, how dangerous this mission is that Bob and Doug are about to embark on. I'm not looking for statistics or numbers, but just in your guts, what are you feeling about the dangers and the risks of this whole endeavor? Thank you.
Well, there's lots of people that are NASA and SpaceX. Well, you know, Marcia, it's really hard as a program manager because my job is to buy down risk, right? And for the last, with Steve laid out, I mean, really for the last 5 years as program manager, that's what I feel like I've been doing. So right now, we are trying to identify any risks that we know of that's out there and continue to look at risks and buy them down. But we also can't fool ourselves. You know, human space flight is really, really tough. You know, it's why we continue to look for risks and do additional assessments, and we never feel comfortable because that's when you're not searching, right? So I think, you know, we talked today about staying hungry, and so we're going to stay hungry, and we're going to stay hungry till Bob and Doug come home. But I've thought of every single risk. We've been sitting here scouring, our teams are scouring and thinking of every single risk that's out there, and we've worked our butt off to buy down the ones we know of. And we'll continue to look and continue to buy them down till we bring them home.
Kathy said it very, very well, and it is tough. Spaceflight is hard, but because of that, we search ourselves and search our souls. We encourage each other, in our partnership with NASA and SpaceX, but certainly within our company, we encourage everybody to look over each other's shoulders. We say, challenge each other all the time. Don't take offense when people challenge your work. We encourage it. We are in the kind of the period right now of the final preparations for flight, but also where the majority of the engineers and people in the factory and everybody who've been working on this all of these years, they're now kind of into a period where they're doing their triple checks and quadruple checks. They're looking under every stone and turning over every rock just to make sure that we're really ready to go. And we have a standing policy in the company that anybody can raise an issue. Anybody can raise a risk. We have systems in place that actually allow anybody in the company to open a risk, what we call risk tickets, to open up an issue, to say, okay, I'm worried about something. And they have a direct line to senior leadership to say, hey, I'm worried about this, up to the moment of launch. Bottom line is it's tough, but we won't launch until we're ready. And we will listen to the data and we'll listen to the people.
And our final question will be from Joey Roulette at Reuters. Joey?
Hey, thanks so much for doing this. This is for Kirk Shireman or anyone else. Kirk, you mentioned the role international partners played. I was wondering if you could give some examples of the response and any concerns raised by those international partners, specifically Roscosmos, in regard to this review. And then for Benji Reed, will any data from this mission inform Starship design or Starship missions in the future? And would Starship ever do any test flights like this one to the space station? Thanks.
From an international partner standpoint, it's really interesting. One is we're a partnership, and we expect all our partners, astronauts and cosmonauts, to fly on these vehicles, on the SpaceX vehicle. So they have a very vested interest. In this particular test flight, there are no international partners. But the very next flight, there will be. And so all the international partners were participating along the way because they know that their crew members will be flying on this vehicle, number one. Number two is it's docking to the International Space Station, and all those countries have made huge investments in that vehicle. We want to make sure that we're not risking the investment in that vehicle up there, or, by the way, their crew members who are living on board the International Space Station. So all along, very, very interested. The difficulties here, one, of course, I talked a little bit about time zones. That's always a difficulty. But we also had export control. So when we develop a vehicle here in the United States, all that technology is not allowed to be exported from the United States. So we have to live within those laws. And finally, there's proprietary data. So if the data was allowed to be exported, but it was SpaceX proprietary, then we would have to redact that data. So we conducted these discussions with our international partners along the way, answered their questions, assured them that their crew members would be safe, all the while meeting the U.S. laws on export control and honoring the proprietary data from SpaceX. So the fact that we did that, and all the partners were part of this review, were part of all this work, and we're ready to proceed is really really an amazing thing. So we're very, very happy about that aspect. Benji?
Sure. And just kind of following up real quick first on what Kirk said, it's exciting for us to get to work with international partners as well. We've had that opportunity on the cargo program from the early days because, again, they jointly run the space station and are partners in that. So coming up and bringing cargo, we had to work with them. And getting to work with the partners and work with all kinds of people around the world is exactly what we want to do. We want to send all kinds of people to space. And ultimately, this mission coming up and everything we're doing is to open that new chapter in the space age. And ultimately make life multiplanetary. That's what we want to do, and it's exciting to do it and see after this mission, what more missions we'll be doing with the space station and with others. In terms of the data, will this inform data on Starship or other programs? Absolutely. Data is data, and we love it. We love data. We want to learn. We want to learn from everything we do and apply it wherever we can to be safer, to be more reliable, to be more efficient, and again, ultimately be able to take lots and lots of people into space.
Thank you. And now we'll go back for some final closing comments from Steve Durzik. Steve?
Hey, thanks, Josh. So, yeah, I just want to reiterate that we had a very successful flight readiness review in that we did a thorough review of all the systems and all the risks, and it was unanimous on the board that we are go for launch. It is really exciting to be launching American astronauts on American rockets from American soil from Kennedy Space Center for the first time in 9 years. I know it's been a long, really challenging road, and I just cannot tell you how proud I am of the NASA SpaceX team for all their talent, hard work, dedication, and perseverance to get to this point of 5 days from launch. I could hardly, I mean, I am incredibly excited and can hardly believe it. So yeah, we want you to join us, most of you virtually, unfortunately, given the situation, on Wednesday, March 27th at 4:33 p.m. When we're going to send Bob to Doug to the International Space Station and dock 19 hours later, and they will become part of the next ISS expedition. So with that, we'll conclude the press conference.